So we seem to be a thread through this year's presentations with a lot of mention of DNA and genetics, and I think Stephane Perreault is going to talk about the diet and behavior of Eastern Coyotes at his study site in Nassau County, and I think there's a little bit of genetic mentioning in this as well.
My name is Stephane Perreault. I'm the naturalist at the Green Tree Foundation. The Green Tree Foundation was founded by Jock Hay Whitney and Betsy Cushing Whitney in 1982. The foundation organizes programs and hosts conferences for the advancement of peace, for human rights, and the cooperation among nations. The foundation also makes grants to local Long Island philanthropies. And finally, we practice sustainable land management on the property which is located in Manhasset in northwestern Nassau County. And it's in the context of this work that we came across this species, the Eastern Coyote, Canis latrans. So we know exactly when coyotes arrived at Green Tree, and that's in November 2019, and they came in as a pair. The individual on the left is the adult resident male, and the individual on the right is the resident female. Now, she's got a very distinctive coloration. It's blonde in color. This is not a rare coloration for southern New York. How do we know she's the female? Well, it took us about 1.5 years to confirm that, in fact. This picture is a little distracting because she's got her mouth wrapped around a dead tailless raccoon, but the part that I want to put attention to is this one here. So she was clearly nursing at the time. This picture was taken on May 20th, which is about 8 weeks after we thought the pups were born, and that's exactly what the literature says, that the pups are no longer nursed and switched to a solid diet. So there's a lot of information on this slide, but unequivocally, this was shown that the blonde-colored coyote was the female in this pair. The primary reason why I'm here is to share with you the result from a diet study that we conducted. The diet study was based on a morphological analysis of the scats, and for that we were very lucky to work with Neil Duncan. Neil is associated with the Museum of Natural History, and he's published several papers on the diet of coyotes in New York City. It wasn't actually that hard to find scat. You would think over a 400-acre property that it would be difficult, but coyotes don't defecate randomly. They defecate to mark their territories. And they do so in areas where they think if other coyotes were to intrude on their territories, that they would find it. So we found a lot of scats along paths and the trails in the woods and the mowed paths in our fields. So for 1.5 years, I walked around with little brown bags in my pocket and a marker. And we used this app that would very accurately record where the scats were found and to provide a permanent record for scat information. So we found 200 scats over a 1.5 year period. We were pretty regular. We found on average about 5 scats per month starting in June 2020 all the way to September 2021. And then something happened. We found 33 scats in October and 68 scats in November. So I want you to keep that in mind, that 60% of our data set came from 2 months, although the study was over 1.5 years. I was done collecting coyote scats at that point, and this is where Neil went to work. What he does is that he takes the scat and put it in a nylon, also known as pantyhose, and then he puts it overnight in hot water, and then later on flushes out all the organic material that is loose. And after a thorough cleaning, he ends up with sieved out material. What is that sieved out material? It is feathers, seeds, hair, man-made material, and of course, bones. And with all of his experience and his access to reference collections, Neil is able to identify the bone and associate it with a taxon, and hopefully all the way down to the species. All the hair analysis is microscope work. So Neil looks at the medulla pattern, which is the core of the hair. You can see here that the rabbit is sort of the honeycomb pattern in the medulla, and the deer as a corn on the cob pattern. And similarly, the scales on the hair is also diagnostic. And here we have a squirrel and raccoon pattern. Now, this is a higher taxon, but since there's only one representative species of each of those taxon at Green Tree, we actually were able to bring it down to the species level with that assumption being made. So this is how many scats we collected. I'll present the diet results by season, a very biased collection in the fall, as you know. This is how it translated to number of scats analyzed. And from here on, we only talk about the number of scats that were analyzed. How do we know that the scats are from coyote? So what we did, and this is the little bit of DNA work we have in here, we sampled 26 scats that were collected at Green Tree, and this is the work that was done by Anthony Caragiulio. He was able to identify that 20 of the scats were in fact from coyote, from DNA analysis. 6 scats were inconclusive, and none of the scats were from other carnivore species. So that gave us a lot of confidence that the scats we had were from coyotes. That still left 155 scats without definitive ID from a DNA point of view. So we can eliminate some of the other carnivores. If we just look at the number of pictures we took in 2021, this is from all camera work, trail camera work. We took 20,000 coyote pictures in 1 year compared to 31 red fox picture in that year. So the odds that the scat we found are from red fox is very, very low. The resident dogs have a known diet, and it doesn't match what we found. The property is close to the property, so there's no foreign dogs there. Cats have a much smaller scats. And raccoon, the scats of raccoon is extremely variable in appearance, but they often use latrines, so they all defecate in one area. And so it's unlikely that, that we have those species as well as falsely collected scats or coyote scats. So nevertheless, we're trying to get those scats analyzed with DNA. Hopefully we'll get it done just to be absolutely sure. So we're going to get into the results now. The species that was the most frequently found food item among mammals was raccoon, and that was a little bit of a surprise. Most studies do not show this high the presence of raccoon in coyote diet. So 23% of the scats, when corrected by season, were down to 1 out of every 3 scat which has raccoon in it, which is pretty extraordinary. Yeah, we have a lot of raccoons at Green Tree, like anywhere else in Nassau County. One of the, yeah, that's a lot of raccoons. One of the things I want to point out is that Neil's analysis is referred to as food items, right? So we don't know from his analysis if the raccoon was preyed upon or scavenged upon. So we have photos to provide a little information on this, and that is seen here. Our cameras are trail cameras. This is an unsuspecting raccoon, by the way. We're going to see 4 coyotes in the next 2 minutes. This is the resident adult male. He showed up about 45 seconds later. Then we have a yearling, 1-year-old coyote that just walked by. Here's another young coyote about, a few seconds later. And the 4th here's the adult resident female. She's very pale, and she lost her tail, so she's even more easy to recognize. So 35 minutes later, there's a little gap here in this sequence. They're all on the left side of the picture, and they're up to something. And here's a young yearling coyote that comes out with a chunky fur. So we're assuming here that they actually got to the coyote. Slide, thanks. And You can see it's a very calm scene, right? There's no fighting here. This is all family sharing a meal. This is the male taking the rear, and finally the last and fourth coyote just leaving with that. All of this is sort of evidence that there might be some cooperative hunting here as far as raccoons is concerned, but we also know that during the time where the adults were feeding the pups, that the male and the female would walk by sometimes with a raccoon in their mouth. So maybe a little bit of both here. The next most abundant mammalian food item were voles. 19% of the scats had voles, and about a third of the scats, again, corrected by season, had voles in them. Now, there looks to be a seasonal effect here, that they fed on voles in the winter and the spring. The trick here is that a green tree is about 70 acres of meadows and fields. So this may not be representative of areas which don't have that much field habitat, but we also knew that they were feeding on meadow voles. It's great to follow after a fresh snow tracks. It tells you a lot about the behavior of the animal. We knew following tracks of coyotes in the field that they would diving and digging for these meadow voles' nests. The third mammalian prey is gray squirrel, little less frequent, 11% of the scats. It does look again like there might be a seasonal effect, and 22% corrected for season. Now, I was telling you earlier that Neil was not always able to identify to the species level. The only group affected by this were rodents. So if you look at all the rodents he identified, most of which would be voles and the gray squirrel, it's actually a frequency of occurrence of 0.46 or 0.62 corrected by season. So rodents are a very important part of the coyote diet for this bear, and that's not really surprising either. Cottontail is the next prey. About 12% of the scats contain this food item. It's pretty even throughout the season. And then we get to a series of mammals that are quite common to abundant at Green Tree, but they're not a big part of the coyote diet. So we're talking about opossums, chipmunks, and white-footed mouse, Microtus genus. The one species we know we have at Green Tree is the white-footed mouse. So not a big part, so a little bit surprising as far as the mice are concerned. We only found one scat with a short-tailed shrew, although they are super abundant at Green Tree. Not a surprise, though. They can be toxic and at least unpalatable to a coyote. What usually happens is that if a predator starts chewing on a short-tailed shrew, they'll spit it out. In this case, this was in the snow. We have a coyote track at the bottom here, so we know that this was a coyote, and the coyote peed on the shrew for good measure. So one of the questions that we were interested in is finding out what is going to be the impact of the coyotes on Long Island on the overabundant white-tailed deer. I'm not saying you should extrapolate the results from Green Tree to all of Long Island, but we wanted to share this with you. There's certainly an attraction from coyotes to white-tailed deer. I love this picture on the right. You have the perfect paw print of a coyote right behind the print of a deer. We knew that they were very interested in deer, following the coyote tracks in the forest. They hit every deer bed in the forest that night, and that we found scat. So there's definitely an interest. We also have reports of staff looking at coyotes and deer in short proximity with very little happening. So they're very interested in the deer. The question is, are they preying upon them? Well, this was an important day. We found a deer carcass on November 15. The body cavity was opened as if it was opened by a predator. But to this day, we don't know if this was a coyote kill or not. But one thing we did is we put a camera next to the body, to the carcass, to see what would happen next. And this is what happened. The male showed up that night. He was extremely anxious by his look on the presence of the camera. So I was pretty bold. I put the camera 15 feet away to get great pictures. What he did is he grabbed the deer by the head and he moved it about 20 feet away. He fed on it a little bit, but the carcass pretty much looked the same the next day. I didn't move the camera closer this time. I just turned the camera. But the same thing happened. He shows up, and then he moves the carcass 60 feet away. So we don't have pictures of them feeding at the carcass, but what we did see is that the rest of the family showed up. And after what looked like a night of eating, that's all that was left of the deer. So it's pretty dramatic. All that was left was the hide and a little bit of meat on the ribs. So the family showed up the next night again, and there was nothing left by the next day. So 3 nights of documentation, one family of coyote completely scavenged a deer carcass. Make it 4 nights if this was the first night, because we found it with the body cavity opened. Ravens came and were part of the scavenging, but most of it was from the coyotes. So let's go back now. These pictures and finding, we know they ate on a deer. Where does that fit with Neil's analysis? Did he find scats with deer hair in it specifically? And the answer is yes. About 7%, that's not showing. It's about 7%, 12 scats contain deer. The question we wanted to know was, hey, where did that fit relative to the finding of the carcass, right? So we knew they fed on deer. All 12 scats were found after November 15, so they all came from that event of them feeding on the carcass. Not a single scat contained deer all the way. This is just showing to October 1, but all the way back to June 2020, there was not a single scat with deer in it. So there were fawns last year on the property. They made it through the fall just fine. So actually, the answer at this site on those 2 years is that they did not provide deer control. They were very interested in them. There was one carcass that was found, which was a possible kill. And as we've shown, is that they're tremendous scavengers, especially as a family group. The other question that a lot of people ask is about cats. I'm not sure why the data's not showing, but I'll just tell you what it is. There's not a single scat that was found that contained cat remains. So this is not for lack of feral cats at Green Tree. This is just a little sample of the feral cats on the property. We keep track of them with the cameras the way we keep track of other mid-sized mammals. Despite the opportunity, there's no evidence from this study that they fed on cats, a little different than what Terrence was suggested earlier. Birds and insect. Neil can't go to the species the way he did for mammals, so it's more of a general finding. There was 25% of scats that contain birds in the winter, so that could be meaningful. We don't have much information other than this set of pictures, which shows the adult male walking through the woods with a Canada goose in its mouth. We don't know the extent of this happening. I don't think anybody should get excited about geese control here. It's January, 90% of the geese are migratory, and there's no evidence that they would hunt regularly Canada geese. This is just a sample of the type of large insects at Green Tree. Again, no bearing on what these coyotes ate. It's good to see that there were no insects in the scats in winter. A little check on Neil's work. And there was a presence of insects quite regular in the spring and in the fall. But Neil was saying that there was no volume to this, right? So the amount of legs and carapace that he found in his scat was quite low. He thought that this was more either opportunistic or even incidental in nature. The presence of apple in scats was not incidental at Green Tree. There's a little orchard there with a wide variety of apple trees. The picture on the left was taken in December. There's some varieties that keep their apple late. And you can see that the presence of apple in the scat is pretty much what we'd expect based on the availability of fruit by season. Here's a young coyote feeding on an apple in the orchard. And this is what a scat looks like after an apple dinner. So this is all volume, all apple, and very distinctive. We also found some man-made material. The whole point here, it's in low frequency. The point here is really to show that if they have an opportunity, despite this being a site with a lot of wild foods, if they have the opportunity, coyotes will go to a garbage and feed on it. This is, again, great to see in the snow. You can tell that the coyote came from the edge of the property, came in, found a peaceful spot, and then decided to go through the garbage. It was a little small garbage bag, and didn't look like there was much to it. But just again, the point here is that they'll be opportunistic. So just a summary of our findings here. These coyotes ate a lot of vegetable material, fruits, seeds, and high rodent and mammal content. No surprise there. That's what the literature says. But there was a high amount of raccoon, which could be a localized result, and these voles as well. Of course, the apples in the orchard, that could be a local result. We have a series of, I put together a series of pictures we didn't know anything about coyotes when they arrived. 3.5 years later, we learned a few things. A lot of what I'm going to show now for the next few minutes is just would provide a little light on and will correlate with the diet results we got. The first thing we looked at is when are they active, right? So it only took 100 set of pictures to fill all 24 hours of the day. So they're active day and night, not all the time, obviously, but pretty much the way you would expect by chance. A little more active at twilight than by chance. The next thing that's really important to know about coyotes and their annual cycle is that in the Northeast, female coyotes are usually only fertile in January and early February. This type of behavior, which we only captured once, this was taken on January 20th, fitting the bill. This is not mating. The female is the blonde-colored coyote, so they were just playing around. The gestation period is 60 days, so not surprisingly, around March 20th, we saw this picture of her. She looked very pregnant, and then a few days later, she wasn't pregnant, although this picture is shown in June. We don't seek dens. We've never seen a den. We don't look for it. We just leave them alone. We don't look for trouble. But from the pictures, you can tell when she's pregnant and all of a sudden she's not. So not much happens then in the next 7 weeks. The pups are nursed. And one thing, though, that we captured after 4 weeks is that if coyotes feel like their den is threatened, they will move the pups. I didn't show the night pictures on this because they were really poor quality, but we got we got pictures of her moving the pups back to the den the next morning, and that's when we found out that they had pups. That's about 4 weeks old. And this was captured at about 7 weeks. This is the first time that we saw the little pups moving on their own. They went out for 12 hours, the male, the female, the pups, and then we didn't see them for 3 weeks after that. And then we started seeing the pups all together. This is at 12 weeks, 18 weeks, 21 weeks. And it's not a coincidence that they're all together. That's what they do. There's this phenomenon called rendezvous sites or rendezvous points. Coyotes leave their pups in one spot and they don't move. The whole day they will spend there. And the parents go all over their territory, get food, and bring it back to them. So these are the rendezvous points that started at Green Tree in, oh my God, these charts are not showing right. All right, I'm explaining everything to you. So, so it all started at Green Tree on one site, one part of the property. They stayed there for 3 weeks. Then they moved a quarter. Oh, there were some, even they would stay at a camera. Oops. they would stay at a camera the whole day. So we'd see them on one day at one camera, a few days, then they would move from one camera to the next. And then they moved about a quarter mile, and then they stayed there for 3 weeks, and then they went back to the previous site, and they stayed there for 3 weeks. The whole thing from June to August, they were at those rendezvous sites. And then they weren't together anymore, and we started seeing those 6, 7-month-old coyote separate in different places of the property. And then I want to go back to these findings. Remember, like I found 33 scats in October and 68 scats. Well, that's because all of a sudden we had 6 coyotes defecating on the property instead of 2. So I want to keep in mind that there could be differences in the diet of young coyotes and old coyotes. Some studies have shown that young coyotes eat less mammals, perhaps because it takes more experience to hunt them. So that could be a possible bias there. It still results, but we want to bring that to your attention. These pups got very comfortable. One stayed for 2 months in front of a camera in a field. It was taking naps, and it had stretching routine after it woke up. But the question we had was, how long are these pups going to stay there? They're supposed to disperse. But they're very comfortable. So we embarked on the difficult task of trying to recognize coyotes by their coat. On this set of pictures, you can see that there are differences in the foreheads, the coloration of the forehead, but that's difficult to do. But we still feel like we're able to get some type of answers. The top coyote stayed for 11 months, the middle coyote stayed for 19 months, and the bottom coyote is still on the territory 2 years later. He never dispersed, but we'll see when he disperses. So understanding, want to know how many coyotes were on the property and understanding the dynamics. Coyotes that have a resident pair, it's all about the bond between those two, right? They mate for life, and they will stay together as long as they're both alive. And then the numbers increase. They could reproduce annually, and the number of pups on the property will increase whether they breed or not. In Manhasset, at that pair, they only had pups in 1 of 3 years, just to let you know. And then there's a dispersion rate, which is different for each pup. So it's not like what I've read about wolves, where you can have a pack which has the same individuals year after year. This is a very dynamic system based on whether they breed or not, how many pups they have, and the dispersion rate. So I'd like to thank Carissa. I'm going to have to name everybody. It's not showing. Carissa Hoff, who's here today, and Caroline Fabian did a fantastic job. They went through hundreds of thousands of pictures. They sorted thousands of coyote pictures. They did a great job. Scientists that help us set up our camera traps and taught us how to collect scats. Mike is one of them, Chris Nagy, Russ Burke. And finally, we'd like to thank the organizers of the conference for inviting us. The foundation has a clear mission of promoting peace, environmental sustainability, and local philanthropy. We believe in making a difference at the local and international level, and it was important to us to have the opportunity to share these results both to the local and scientific community. So, thank you.